Hi, folks. This is Pastor Dave Grisham here with Forgotten Country Ministries, and I wanted to give you a testimony of something that happened back in 2014 with us, with my wife and I, Tracy, with myself and my wife, Tracy. And it was a very amazing story. You're going to feel blessed by this testimony. On May 11th, 2014, we had a major wildfire that burned our house to the ground, along with 236 other homes that burned to the ground. Now, it started off as a really crazy weekend. That whole weekend was crazy. May 11th was Mother's Day, by the way. And so Saturday night, we were on our way to go into Amarillo, and we were heading down Highway 136 out of Fritch going into Amarillo, and we came across a head-on collision that as we crossed over this hill, there it was. It was very fresh. It had just happened right in front of us. We didn't see it happen, but it happened just seconds before. And this head-on collision was so fresh, we were the second car that stopped. And so we went to the car in the middle of the street, and there was a man by the name of Gabriel who was trapped in the driver's side, and his legs were crushed by the dashboard. The whole dashboard had caved in on his legs. And so I started talking to him, holding his hand, and witnessing to him about Christ. And another man came up and tried to interrupt, and Gabriel said, "Shut up, I'm trying to talk to this preacher about Jesus." And I implored him right then. I said, "Look, I don't know how bad your injuries are." I said, "But if you're not serving God, you need to repent and give your life to Jesus Christ." And by this time, when I was talking to him, there was a line of cars, and several people were out of their cars, and they were watching this. And I took this man by the hand, and he literally cried out to God. And when I say cried out to God, I mean at the top of his lungs. He really thought that he was probably going to die. If you had seen this car, you would have believed that he might die. It was completely destroyed. When we got there, you could still smell the burnt powder from the airbags. That's how fresh this accident was. After he gave his life to Christ and I gave him a hug, the firemen stepped up. They had been waiting right behind me. I did not know this, but the firemen were already there. They were waiting right behind me, and they brought in the jaws of life and started extricating him. Turns out Gabriel did survive. We went over to the other vehicle, which was a minivan. Gabriel's vehicle was an SUV. We went over to the minivan, and there was a man by the name of Edward in the front seat who was barely conscious, and we prayed over him, and he was a pastor. He did not survive. He died that night of internal injuries. His mother-in-law tried to get out of the vehicle, and I grabbed her and I put her back in the vehicle. It turns out that her leg was broken, which was a good thing. I picked her up and put her back in. We didn't want her walking around on a broken leg. And myself and Big John and my wife Tracy all prayed over all three occupants in the car. And then the firemen came up there, and then we left. Then we went into Amarillo, and that Saturday night we stayed at a place called Duke Tracy's. We stood out in front of a bar called Duke Tracy's, and we preached the gospel there. And my wife stopped a riot. There was literally a huge riot about to break out in front of the bar across the street. And my wife acted like a mama bear, walked over there and started rebuking everybody, told them to quit acting like a bunch of drunken kids and act their age, and it broke up the fight. And about this time, the phone rang. It was 1:30 in the morning, and it turns out our daughter, Angie, was having Ethan, was giving birth to Ethan that night. So we drove from there all the way to Borger. Mind you, this is 1:30 in the morning, Sunday morning now. We drive all the way to Borger and witness the birth of our grandson. And after this was over, we go home, we take a quick nap, because the next day was Mother's Day, and we had been taking care of these two children named Destiny and Dylan, and they were, their mother was a crack addict, and we took care of them for 3 years, but they were in our home, and so we took them to go visit their mother on Mother's Day as part of supervised visitation through Child Protective Services in Amarillo. And so when we got done with that, we were on our way home, and we got the call about our home, about the whole Fritch area was on fire, and they were evacuating. We couldn't go home. So we go back to my mother-in-law's house, and we stay there. And after we take another nap because we're tired. After we wake up, we look on the news, and we find out how bad the news is. And I knew in the area where my house was, I got a call from a friend of mine who said, your area is on fire. It's all on fire. Well, my son and my daughter-in-law, who we were just witnessed the birth of their child, they lived 1 block over and 1 block down. They just lived around the corner from us on Hill Street over by Lake Meredith. And so I got on my knees and I cried out to God. I said, Lord, if anybody's house is going to burn down, let it be mine. Don't let it be my son's house. He's got a young family. He has no insurance on his house because his house was paid for. We gave them the house. We gave them a house for free. And they didn't have any payments on it, but they didn't have insurance on it either. It was an older home, and they just didn't have insurance on it. And his van was there. That's his work van. He needed that as his business. And if he'd lost that, he'd have lost everything. They'd have been completely bankrupt. So I got on my knees and I cried out to God. I said, Lord, if anybody's house is going to burn down, let it be mine, but don't let it be his. Please protect his home. So my son calls me later in the day and says, hey, Dad, I got some bad news about your house. And he sent me a picture on my phone of where our house used to be standing. And there was a picture of our Suburban and our minivan sitting there, both burned to the ground. They were both just crispy critters. They were just destroyed. And I said, okay, well, I guess we know our house is burned to the ground. So we were worried about my son's place, and we still kept praying about it. Well, as it turns out, my son's house around the corner was the only house in that neighborhood to survive. It was the only house. It was amazing. When the fire was over and they let everybody go back into the area, the grass had all burned in his house. It burned right up to the house, but it did not set the house on fire. It burned under his van, but it did not set his van on fire. The only thing they lost was a kiddie pool in the yard that melted and a sandbox for the kids that had melted. The fire had burned right up to their house. I mean, literally to the edge of it. On one of the doors, when they opened the door, the back door, there was a slight singe on the carpet where you could tell the flames had just started to get the carpet on fire, but it never caught. Their house didn't even smell like smoke. This was the crazy thing. The house didn't even smell like smoke. They lost no vehicles. They didn't lose their house. They had no electricity for a while because the power was out, because the power pole behind their house burned to the ground. So they were waiting on the electricity to get turned back on. There was a gas can sitting next to, and I've got a little something here to show you here in a second. There was a gas can sitting next to the house with gasoline in it, a plastic gas can. The fire burned around the edge of the gas can and did not catch the gas can on fire. If that thing had burst into flames, it would have set the whole house on fire, but it did not. This is the power of prayer, folks. God not only saved my son's house, but a few days later, my son went and picked up the gas can, and underneath it, he still has it right here, framed, right here. You see this picture? This is what was underneath the gas can. As you can see, it's burned around the edges, in the kind of in the shape of the bottom of the gas can. You know what it says on there? It says Jesus. There is power in the name. Not only did God save my son's house, He left a calling card to let him know who did it. The only begotten Son of God is real. He listens to prayer. He answers prayer. And this right here is proof. Jesus, there is power in the name. So the next time you need something, the next time you're in desperate need, you call on Jesus Christ. You call on him, and he will answer if you're a faithful servant of his. God bless you all. You have a good day.